Welcome class back to Project 3 Web Applications. This video is going to cover our 6th version, which is setting up user accounts, pages 421 through 428. So in this section, we'll set up a user registration and an authorization system so that people can register an account and log in and out. We'll create a new app to contain all the functionality related to working with users. We'll use the default user authentication system included with Django to do as much of the work as possible. We'll also modify the topic model slightly so every topic belongs to a certain user. Okay, so we first need to create the user's app, and to do so we need to get into our learning log environment. So through our terminal, we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, so again, changing our directory to learning log. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and activate. So we've got our learning environment, scripts, and activate. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and do the commands that you see on page 421. So hopefully this one looks familiar. When we created the learning logs app, this is the step that we did. Okay, so now we have a user's app. Okay, we can go ahead and do dir to see what files are there. We'll scroll up a little bit here and we'll go ahead and change our directory to users. Okay, and then do a dir on that as well, just to see that the files are there, and they should look familiar. We've been working with the views, and we'll be creating some URLs and so along the way. So I'm going to go ahead and go back up a level so that I'm just in a learning log, so that when I go ahead and run server that I'm in the right spot. So we're going to go ahead and add users, so this new app, into our settings file. Okay, so in our learning log, okay, we're going to go ahead and open up settings. Scroll down, we can see that there's our app of learning logs. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and add users. Okay, so that's the only update that we need to do to the settings file. Okay, so now Django will include the users app in our overall project. Okay, so the next step is to go ahead and add modify the root URL so it includes the URLs we write from the user's app. Okay, so the root URLs, okay, and we're going to go ahead and add after the admin, we're going to go ahead and add in our users. So path, users, comma at the end. Just always double check your typing. It's just going to make it more friendly when we go ahead and run, right? Okay, so what this does is this line will match any URL that starts with the word users, okay, such as localhost, users, and then login. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to go ahead is we're going to get the login page up and running. So I'm going to go ahead and save this file. So we want to make a new URLs file in our users directory. So I'm going to go ahead and collapse this so that I'm not confusing. And I'm going to go ahead and close these files. So here we want to go into users, and we want to go ahead and create a new file, and we want to save this. Okay, and we want to make sure that we're saving it in the correct directory. So users and then URLs. Okay, so here is the code. We import the path function, okay, and then import the include function so that we can include some default authentication URLs that Django has defined. The default URLs include named URL patterns such as login and logout. We set the variable app name to users. So Django can distinguish these URLs from URLs belonging to other apps. Okay, so the login page's pattern matches the URL localhost users/login. Okay, so when Django reads this URL, the word users tells Django to look in the users directory and find the URL's py file. Okay, and so let's go ahead and create the login template next. So we are going to create our directory first. So inside the learning log users directory, so the one that we're currently in, we're going to go ahead and create a new directory called templates. So much like we did with learning logs, right? We created a templates and then we created learning logs within that. So it's the same process here. So we're going to go ahead and create a new folder and we'll call it templates. Okay, and within templates, we're going to create a new folder and we're going to call it registration. Or no, we are going to call it users. Okay, inside the registration. I was right the first time. Okay, so registration. Okay, so I want to make sure that in template we now have registration. Okay, and so this is where we're going to store our login HTML file. So I'm going to go ahead and do a new and save. Okay, so I want to make sure that we go through that templates, registration, and then we'll go ahead and type in login.html. Okay, so here's the completed code for login. Okay, so this template is going to extend base, as we see in line 1, to ensure that the login page will have the same look and feel as the rest of the site. If the form errors attribute is set, and that's our line 5, we display error messages, reporting that the username and password combination don't match anything stored in the database. Okay, we want the login view to process the form, so we set the action argument as the URL of the login page. The login view sends a form to the template, and it's up to us to display the form. And we add a submit button, and we include a hidden form element called next. The value argument tells Django where to redirect the user after they've logged in successfully, and that's where we want to go back to is the home page, so otherwise known as the index page. Okay, so linking to the login page, we're going to go back to our base file. Okay, so navigating back into learning logs, we're going to go into our templates and learning logs and open up base. And then we're going to go ahead and modify the code as you see at the bottom of page 423 and the top of page 424 is the end of the code. In Django's authentication system, every template has a user variable available, which always has an is authenticated attribute set. The attribute is either true if the user is logged in and false if they aren't. This attribute allows us to display one message to authenticated users and another to unauthenticated users. So here we're going to display a greeting to users that are currently logged in, so hello and then their username. Okay, and if they're not logged in, we're going to go ahead and direct them to the login page. Okay, so the next step is to go ahead and test. So we're going to come back to our terminal. And we're going to do our Python manage run server. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and open up our URL. Okay, so localhost. Okay, and there we have a learning log, topics, and login. So let's go ahead and click on login. Okay, and there we have our 2 boxes. Okay, and then we would put in our password. Okay, now we're going to add in the logging out. So we're going to add that to our base file, and then we will just continue through the process of the kind of the normal process where we add to the base, we create an HTML file, we add to the URL, we add to views. Okay, so that's our next process here. So let's go ahead and go back to our base file. after the hello username, we're going to go ahead and add in the logout. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this information right here and paste it. Okay, so and just go ahead and update it with the logout. And of course the name, the text at the end as well. Okay, then we're going to create a logout confirmation page that will notify our visitors that they have successfully logged out. Okay, so here we are, where we're going to save it in our template. So logged out.html, and here is the code from that. And we'll go ahead and save. And let's come back to our page. I'm going to go ahead and log in with my information. Okay, and then here it says hello. I know it looks kind of weird. I kind of judged it myself when I first saw it, but it's exactly what we told it to do in the code. Hello, and then this is our username. That's the one we created back a couple sections ago. And then we'll go ahead and do a log out, and here is our code that we just created. Okay, so the next step is to go ahead and create the registration page. So again, we are going to adjust the URL. So we are going to go into the user's URL. Okay, so here is our user's URL. We're going to go ahead and add that path for registration. Okay, so the completed code for your URLs Python file within the users directory. So on my line 5, we are doing from, and remember the period says that we're staying in the current directory. We're going to import views because we have multiple views files, and that's why that's important. And then we go ahead and we just set up the path for registration. Next is to come to the views file, and then we need to go ahead and create our function in here. Okay, so first we import the render and redirect functions. Okay, and that's our line 1. Okay, then we import the login function to log the user in if their registration information is correct. Okay, we also import the default user creation form. In the register function, we'll check whether or not we're responding to a post request. If we're not, we make an instance of user creation form with no initial data. If we're responding to a post request, we make an instance of user creation form based on the submitted data. We then check that data to make sure that it is valid. If the submitted data is valid, we'll go ahead and call the form's save, okay, method to save the username and the hash of the password to the database. The save method is going to return a newly created user object, which we will assign to new user. When the user's information is saved, we'll log them in by calling the login function with the request and new user objects. Okay, and that is that line 18. We create a valid session for the new user. Finally, we direct the user to the home page in line 19. Okay, so let's go ahead and create register.html in our templates folder. And here we have the completed code for register. Okay, just as before, we use the AS_P method. So Django will display all the fields in the form appropriately, including any error messages if the form isn't filled out correctly. Okay, so now finally we need to link to the registration page, and again we're going back to base to do that. We now have our updated code for base, adding in the path or the link for the else side. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a refresh on our page. So I'm going to take us back and we're going to go ahead and refresh. Okay, we now have register in there as well. Okay, and then we would type in our username. And so you can go ahead and do this. You can create usernames. I know I created one earlier. Let's call this one Amy_Helgeson. Give it a password and then a password confirmation. Oh, I didn't type them in right. Go figure. Let's give this another try. Okay, and there we are. And this one says, hello, Amy_Helgeson instead of that LLENV. So you can create as many of those users that you want to. And this ends our section, completing the section, setting up users' accounts. Any questions? Please let me know. Thank you.